Hi, this is Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to try out a new format. Today, it's going to be a bit more of a chatty type video rather than showing you stuff down on my table. We're going to talk about how do I pick the pens and inks that I use each month. So grab a drink, I've got some nice mint tea here. Let's jump in and talk about the pens and inks and how I choose them. So, we're not on the map for a change. Here I am back on the camera. As I say, this is an experiment. I'd love your comments about it. Please drop a comment down below. Would you like to see more videos like this? So let's jump into the topic. How do I choose the pens and the inks that I'm going to use each month? Well, this all started back in October of 2020. What I was finding is I was using the same pens and, to be honest, the same inks all the time. There wasn't a lot of variety in it. So I thought, right Gary, we need to do something. And that's where I came up with the idea of using the different pens and inks. Now obviously, I was inspired by watching other videos because there's quite a few people out there. Some do weekly pens, some do monthly. And I thought, I like that idea. Let's give it a go. So I got this notebook. This is by Oxford and it's the optic paper. This is in the B5 size. And with that, I set up my first pens and inks. Here we go. Hopefully that can be captured on the camera. There were 7 pens and inks on it. And that meant I had a different pen and ink every day of the week. And I carried on doing that right the way through to May of 2021. Now, you may say, Gary, what happened then? Well, what happened is I got this. This is by Gale & Leather and it's the A5 portfolio. And in here, hopefully we can see, we've got room there for 6 pens. Obviously, there's only 5 in at the moment, 1 out. The one that's out is the one I'm using today. Now, I wanted to keep everything in my portfolio, so that meant I could no longer do 7 pens. So I dropped it down to using only 6. I'm just going to jump forward in my pad so I can show you that change. So here we go. This is from May, where we go down to 6. Still using that same notepad there. The other thing I thought of at the time was, Gary, why don't you start using themes for each month? Again, I was finding I was moving towards using the same pens and inks all the time. So the idea about introducing a theme was to mix it up, to essentially force myself to use some different pens and some different inks. That first month, I called it the Blues, and it was all about blue inks. Now, I haven't done a full ink month since then. Maybe I need to do that again. Because one of the interesting things I found from it was how I enjoy different shades of blue. And I found I enjoyed more of the teal and the turquoise rather than those plainer blue colours. I wouldn't have found that out if I hadn't had that theme. So again, this is part of the idea of the theme. It's exploring things that take me out of my comfort zone, even whilst I'm using the same pens, the same inks, the same papers that I already had. And I really do enjoy doing that. So that first month was about the blues. The next month, well, that was all about pens that were under 50 Australian dollars. Again, it was interesting because it got me to explore some pens that I wouldn't normally have used. Really enjoyed it. And that's why I've kept on doing this idea of themes. Now, I've got themes in my system waiting to be done. Here's a list of some of them that are there now. But again, a question for you. What other themes would you like me to use? What can I add onto that list? Drop that comment down below. At the start of each month, you may have noticed by now, I do a video. And that's where I look at the pens I'm going to be using that month. And as we've seen, I always start off in here. And this is that Oxford optic paper in the B5 size. While I do this, it lets me use 4 lines per pen. The top one is the pen name. Then we've got the ink name. Then I do drying times. And then that bottom line, that's for if I change the ink during the month. Now, I'd only change it once to a different colour. So you may be saying, well, Gary, why would you change it? At the start of each month, I try to have the pens as full as I can. But as the month goes on, some of those, they'll run out of ink. And that's where I have to make a decision. So what I always say is, if it runs out of ink during the first 2 weeks of the month, then I will refill the pen. Sometimes I use the same ink, but most of the time I will put a different ink into it. Once I go past that midpoint, then I have to think to myself, right, do I want to carry on using this pen? If I do, well, there we go. Just fill it with ink again. And I've got to be honest, most of the time I say, well, no, I'm not going to continue. I'm going to try a different pen. And so I then go and I look at the pens that I've already got ink in. Now, usually these are pens that either were left from the previous month or that I've done a review video on recently. And I don't like throwing away ink, so I'll leave them there. Downside of that, I often have about 20 inked up pens at any one time. But it means I can then try a different pen. Up till now, I haven't been recording that, so you've got no idea what I've been doing. But starting this month, in November, which is when I'm recording this video, I've now drawn on the back another grid. And this is where I'm going to record the pens that I swapped to. So here we can see that I've now swapped to a Narwhal Key West pen. And I love this ink. Just look at this little pip. I don't know if it comes through on the camera, that gorgeous gold sheen coming through. So by doing that, what it means is that I'm now able to keep a better track of what I'm doing and what I'm using each month. And then at the end of each month, that's when I come on and I do my wrap-up video. Because I've added this new record, I'm going to keep most of the wrap-up video the same. So I then give the pens that I've been using this month a ranking. And I go from 6, which is the one that I least enjoyed, up to 1, which is the one I most enjoyed. And I will be honest, it's so hard some months. I have to be very, very picky because, well, I enjoy all my pens. I just enjoy using them. I enjoy the whole experience. And if I find a pen that I don't enjoy, trust me, you'll know about it. But I really haven't found any that would fit that at the moment. One of the things I'm considering for the new year, and again, I'd like your comments on this, is halfway through the month to add in a new video, which will be, I'm at the moment tentatively calling it my halftime report. So that's where I give you a feel of how I'm going for that month, what my thoughts are on the pens so far. I won't rank them. It will just be going through in the order that I'm using the pens and just really discussing them briefly and giving ideas about what I'm doing with the ink, if I'm going to change it, if I'm going to take it out of rotation. Maybe even a quick look at some pens that I'm thinking to fetch into the rotation. So drop a comment down below. Is that something you'd be interested in seeing? So we've already discussed this B5 notepad. That's what I record on video. Now, as well as that, I've got this one here. This is a B6 notepad. This was bought from Desk Bandit. I'm just going to quickly skip in so we miss the first few pages because they've got my contact details and such. Here we go. I'm going to go all the way here. This is November. So what I also do, after I've done the video, I come in here and I fill this out. And this is the same pens and inks that I'm using. If I go back a page, if I go the right way, there we go. You can also see that I put on my rankings at the end of the month. Maybe if I show it to the camera, it might be better. There we go. You can also see I put my rankings on there. And I use this nice goldy coloured pen. So this is a Twisty Eco, and it's got, in fact, let me fetch it in. There we are, rather than just telling you. This is a Twisty Eco. It's got a 1.1 stub nib. Hopefully my camera will be able to pick that up for you. See how far I need to go back. There's my focus point. There we go. No. Do you know, it's so hard to hold a pen when you're trying to get it into frame with the camera. There we go. 1.1 stub nib. In here, I've currently got an ink by Robert Oster, and it's Run Gilt. It's a really nice gold-coloured ink. Now, I am finding a slight problem with this. Because I don't use that pen that often, I only really use it for these pens and use videos. So it gets really gunged up. So in January, I'm going to change the ink, regardless of if there's any left in there or not. I've got an ink from Pure Pens called Welsh Gold. And it's a black ink, but it's got lots of gold shimmer in there. So I'm going to change that to see if it can make any difference and stop it getting gunged up. Anyway, I've got this. Now, why I have this, hopefully I can show this backwards. In my Galen leather, behind where the pens are, there's a little pocket. That fits in there. So that means no matter where I am, if something should happen to my brain and I forget what ink is in which pen, I've got it written down there anyway. We've done the first video, we've filmed it, and I start using the pens. So I've got 6 pens now. Each day in rotation, I use that pen and ink. I say if it runs out, then I have to make the decision. But generally, I use them in order. So throughout the month, each pen gets usually 4, sometimes even 5 uses, which is quite handy because that means I really get to experience the pen and experience it under different conditions and on different papers. Now, the main papers I'm using at the moment, I've got Rhodia. Now, in here, every day I do 2 pages, and what I do is I've got a couple of apps on my phone which give me quotes. So on one page, I use one app. On the other page, I then use the second app. I do this every morning, which allows me to get some time in and use that pen. I also have a daily journal, so each morning I will write 1 A5 size sheet in my daily journal. Now, at the moment, that journal, that's also Rhodia paper. So we're using Rhodia quite a lot. I use this quite a bit. Now, this here, this is a dirt cheap notepad. I think it was $5 for 2 from the local supermarket. And in here, as you can see, I just jot all sorts of rubbish. I might do some doodling. There we go. Just an idea. So I'm using this every day and I'm writing little notes. So when I'm working at my desk, if I need to write down a little reminder, it goes into this book. You know, it's a rubbish book. At the end of the day, when it's full, I'll just be discarding it. I also have a number of these notepads. Now, I'm covering up the front because it's got I think it's humorous, but some people may find some of the words offensive. This is from an Australian company called Typo. And again, with this, what I do is when I'm going through internet articles that I want to remember, when I'm taking notes from a course or from a meeting, I use this. So this is, as I say, it's from Typo. I've just finished this one this week, but I have got quite a few other ones to use. So that's another type of paper again. So another one is this. It's a little tiny notepad, isn't it? I got this from an art store, and this has got more artsy type paper. I would think the paper might be 120 GSM. I don't actually know because it doesn't say anywhere what it is. But I find this is nice. And again, I use this for stupid little things. On here, I've recently got a Bennu talisman. And one of the things I like to do is I like to test how it goes for drying out between usage. So as you can see, the first one, there was a day between them. And then maybe we get a couple of days. This last one, I left it a week. And now I won't actually use it again for another couple of weeks. I just like to leave them and then I use it in here so I can keep a record and see how it goes for drying out. And again, like I said, I use this for all sorts of silly little notes that I need to make for myself. But it's yet another type of paper. About halfway through the month, I then sit down and I start on my review for how I'm getting on. And I do that using this notepad here. This is from Gale & Leather and it's 52 GSM Tommy River paper. And what I do is in here, I put down my thoughts. You can see as a rough bookmarker, is I actually put little post-it notes on of what pen is from which page. And I find that works really well to help me remember when I'm quickly trying to do it when I'm doing my video. Now, sometimes I do forget to fetch this in, but it's one thing I am trying to make myself remember to do each time because, again, it's a different type of paper and you can actually see how my thoughts are evolving. So this is done roughly halfway through the month. Then I put together my final thoughts at the end of the month and that's actually written down. I'm going to fetch this in on this. Again, this is a cheaper notepad. Now, what I'm actually showing you here, this is my script for today's video. This is how I do my scripts. This actual particular pen ran out halfway through writing the script, so that's why it changes colour. Again, it's a cheaper notepad. I want to say it was about $3 or $4, really cheap, A4 size. And then what I've got that's actually sat at the side of my camera. So when I'm recording, I've got my camera next to it, my notes, And then again, you don't normally see this. Every so often, I flick the page over when I need to go to the next page of the script. So it's a good job I turned the page because it's telling me what I need to talk about next. How do I pick a pen? Well, what I do is I take a look at the pens and I take a look at the theme. So if the theme is in pens under $20, I know that that's the pens I've got to look at. I look through the pens and I also look through in my app when I last used them, how often I use them. The reason I'm doing this is I want to make sure I'm not using the same pen all the time. You know, I have got a couple of pens. I bought them a year ago. Yes, I filled them up when I did my initial review, not touched them since. So this is a way of allowing me to explore and find those pens I'm not using as often. And they're the ones I do try to fetch in. Now, I would admit there are certain pens that I use all the time. You know, here's one of them. This is my Leonardo Memento Zero Grande. I absolutely love this pen. Really do. It's a medium nib. Another one I find that I use quite a lot is this Diplomat Aero. Reason I use that, it's got a really wet, broad nib. And in one respect, that's why I need these themes, because otherwise I would use them and nothing else but them. So by using the themes and then really thinking about each of the pens, then I can fetch in the ones that I haven't used and maybe even from a manufacturer that I want to explore more. Now, silly as it sounds, I started doing this at the start of the previous month. So I spend the first 2 weeks, obviously not all the time, but I'm chopping in and out of my list of pens that I'm going to use for the following month. This means I'm really considering it. I'm not just picking any old pen. The other thing that I try to do with the pens is I look at the manufacturers. Now, unless there's a specific reason, I like to make sure I've got no more than 2 pens from the same manufacturer each month. Again, it's just so that I don't always have Moonman pens or always have Jinhao pens. It means I've got a good mix. If it's not a price-based month, I also try to have a range of prices as well. So there's a lot of thought goes into what pen to use each month. So I picked my pens. Next thing to do is the inks. As a general rule, I try to match the colour of the pen and the colour of the ink. So if I've got a blue pen, ideally I'll have a blue ink. Red pens, red inks. The Diplomat, silver colour, any ink will do. You know, so again, that's where I need to look at that colour. The other thing which I do is I look at the colours that I've got. Now, a couple of months I've had, like this month, I've got 3 reds. And I've got to be honest, it's a bit monotonous. So I like to make sure I'm mixing up the colours. So I try to avoid having more than 2 of the same colour. Some months you can't avoid it, like this month, because there was a specific reason why I wanted to try each of those inks. So I got 3 reds. The final consideration with inks is, well, I don't want more than 2 inks from the same manufacturer. If I didn't do this, I will be honest with you, virtually every ink I use would be from Diamine. I absolutely love the range of colours and I've got a whole load of them. I've also got a load of samples from other manufacturers. And I do find, as I say, I would tend towards that Diamine with a side helping of Robert Oster. By limiting the number of inks per manufacturer, again means I'm getting a good spread from each of those manufacturers. So we've now looked at the pens, we've now looked at the inks, we've looked at how I record them, and we've looked at how I analyse them. Just going to turn the page. See, you're seeing all this behind the scenes magic. So let's just summarise why I'm doing this. The whole point of this is to force me to experience different pens. I don't want to carry on like I was about 12 months ago, using virtually the same pens and inks. I want to explore. That's, to me, it's the fun of what I'm doing. So I use the idea of a theme. That theme, it helps to focus me and helps me to move into pens and inks that I wouldn't normally reach for. When I have picked my pens and ink, once I've done my video, it's then important to me that I use them on a whole range of different papers. We've seen some papers. I also try to do some writing on post-it notes or sticky notes. I don't know what they call them nowadays. I always call it a post-it, but I know that's a brand. I also try to use copy paper. I've got 80 GSM paper and 100 GSM paper. And if I tell you something, one of the things that surprises me is the difference between them two. And you would have thought, well, 20 GSM, that's not a lot of difference. It really is when you're writing on it. So the key to me, as I say, it's about exploring rather than using the same things. I know I keep saying this over and over, but that's the whole reason I do it. So that's how I pick my pens and inks. Going forward, as I said, I want to start growing the way that I explore them. And that's where I'd love, as I said before, just drop them down in the comments. Have you got any themes that you could suggest? Any inks, any pens? I love to get people's suggestions. What I do then is I record them, and when I next do my order, and I've got to be honest, I do bulk my orders up because I don't actually buy very often now in Australia because the prices are just too ridiculous. I often buy from the UK and occasionally from the US, and I've had a couple of pens that I bought from Appleboom. I think that's in Holland. So anyway, I batch up my orders, mainly because in the UK, if I have the order big enough, I get free shipping, so it's actually quite reasonably priced in total then. Drop me any ideas. I really would love to hear what you're thinking. How about how you choose? Do you have the idea of a theme? Do you have a way of deciding which pens and inks that you're going to use? Again, why not drop how you choose down in the comments? Let's kickstart the conversation. Please hit the thumbs up button if you've liked the video. Every time you like, every time you comment, well, it helps with the YouTube algorithm and it helps to surface my content for other people. I'd love to see the channel growing. I love talking to people. And that's one of the things I like about YouTube. We can get those conversations going in the comments. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.